It was supposed to be a weekend of laughter, sunshine, and family memories. But by Sunday evening, the Hendersons were gone. Their car found abandoned, doors locked, food still inside, and not a single trace of where they went. The Henderson family, Mark, 42, his wife Claire, 39, and their two children, Emily, 10, and Noah, 7, left their home in Oregon for a quiet 3-day trip to the Cascade Mountains. They told neighbors they wanted to unplug, to spend time together before the school year started. Friends described them as loving, close-knit, ordinary. There was nothing unusual about them, nothing that suggested what would come next. They checked into a small cabin near Crescent Lake on a Friday afternoon. Surveillance footage from the nearby general store showed them buying snacks, smiling, and laughing. Locals remember the children waving as they left. It was the last confirmed sighting of the Hendersons alive. On Sunday, when Mark didn't show up for work, a colleague called the sheriff's office. A search began immediately. Deputies found their SUV parked near a trailhead 5 miles from the cabin. Inside were wallets, phones, clothes, even the family dog's leash. Everything seemed untouched, except the driver's seat, which was pushed back farther than Mark would have needed. There were footprints leading into the woods, but only 2 sets, not 4. They stopped abruptly near a small stream. No signs of a struggle, no drag marks, nothing. Search teams combed the forest for days. Helicopters circled above the dense pine canopy. Divers scoured the lake. Cadaver dogs were brought in, but they found nothing. It was as if the forest had swallowed the family whole. Locals whispered about the area's dark history. Hikers who went missing without explanation. Strange lights reported at night. Unnerving echoes deep within the trees. One ranger even claimed his radio picked up faint voices calling for help. Though when he replayed the recording later, there was only static. A week later, a discovery deepened the mystery. Nearly 6 miles from where the SUV was found, searchers came across a child's backpack. Emily's inside were her favorite stuffed animal, a coloring book, and a small disposable camera. The film was developed. Most of the pictures were ordinary. The family smiling by the lake, roasting marshmallows by a fire. But the final photo was different. It was taken at night. Blurry, off-center. A dark figure stood at the edge of the forest, barely visible in the glow of the campfire. Its shape was human, but too tall, too still. Investigators never determined what it was, or who. The Hendersons were never found. Their case remains one of Oregon's most haunting disappearances. No evidence, no answers, no closure. And yet, 2 years later, a park ranger discovered something in a remote part of the Cascades. A piece of fabric, weathered and torn, half buried beneath the moss. When tested, it matched Claire Henderson's jacket. But here's where things get even stranger. The location where it was found, nearly 40 miles from the family's last known spot. How could they have traveled so far without a trace? And who, or what, was in that last photograph? When investigators found the torn piece of Claire Henderson's jacket 40 miles from where the family's SUV was discovered, the case shifted from a missing persons search to something far stranger. That piece of fabric, faded red, frayed along the seams, had been lying in a clearing untouched by hikers or animals. Experts confirmed it had been there for over a year, exposed to the harsh mountain weather. It was the only physical trace of the family ever found. But the question that haunted everyone was simple. How did it get there? The terrain between the 2 points was nearly impassable. Steep cliffs, rivers, and miles of dense forest without marked trails. Even experienced mountaineers struggled to navigate that region. There was no logical way the Hendersons could have reached it on foot, especially with 2 young children. Search teams went back into the woods. This time, they focused on that 40-mile radius, combing every canyon and creek bed. Drones were deployed. Cadaver dogs were flown in from out of state. Still nothing. No bones, no clothing, no campsite remains, just silence. Locals began to avoid the area altogether. Some said their compasses spun out of control near the spot where the fabric was found. Others claimed their radios picked up static-laced voices calling for help. Most dismissed it as paranoia. But even seasoned rangers admitted the forest felt different there, quiet in a way that pressed against your chest. Among the strangest clues was a series of photographs discovered by a hiker almost a year after the fabric was found. The disposable camera had been left inside a rusted metal box near an old logging road. The photos were blurred, the film water-damaged, but a few frames were clear enough to make out shapes. One showed what looked like an empty tent in a moonlit clearing. Another, a shadow moving between trees. The last picture was almost identical to the final image from Emily's camera. The same eerie glow, the same tall figure just beyond the firelight. Investigators couldn't determine if the two photos were taken in the same location. The trees looked similar but not identical. That's when theories began to spread. Some believed the Hendersons had become lost and succumbed to exposure, their remains scattered by animals and weather. Logical, perhaps, but it didn't explain the distance. It didn't explain the missing equipment, or why not a single bone was ever found. Others suggested something darker, human involvement, that someone had followed the family, lured them deeper into the woods. A drifter, a hunter, maybe someone who knew the terrain well enough to vanish without a trace. But no suspects were ever identified. No footprints, tire tracks, or campsite evidence belonging to anyone else were ever discovered. And then there were the whispers, theories that blurred the line between reality and folklore. Some spoke of the Echo Woods, a part of the Cascades said to disorient travelers, leading them in endless circles until they disappeared. Others mentioned strange lights reported in the area that same weekend in 1998, bright orbs hovering silently between the trees, seen by two separate campers who didn't know each other. When police followed up, both witnesses described something chilling. The air felt charged, like static before a storm. One claimed his watch stopped working the moment the lights appeared. But perhaps the most unsettling report came from a volunteer searcher who ventured out alone one early morning near Crescent Lake. He told investigators he heard children laughing in the distance. Two distinct voices, a boy and a girl. When he called out, the laughter stopped instantly. He was so shaken that he refused to return to the site the next day. Years passed. The Henderson case faded from headlines, becoming one more mystery in a region filled with unanswered questions. Families moved on, investigators retired, and the forest reclaimed the story in silence. Then, 20 years later, a wildfire swept through the same mountain range, burning thousands of acres, including the area where the family's SUV was first found. When fire crews returned weeks later to assess the damage, they discovered something chilling, a circle of ground that hadn't burned. It was small, maybe 6 feet across, and at its center lay an old child's shoe. The fabric was nearly disintegrated, but analysis revealed a partial name label on the inside. No. The rest had faded away, but the spacing matched the name Noah Henderson. How it survived the fire, no one could say. The surrounding forest was charred black, every tree turned to ash, but that one circle remained untouched. Investigators reopened the case briefly, hoping new technology might reveal something the 1998 team missed. Drones mapped the terrain, heat scans analyzed the soil composition, and ground-penetrating radar searched for disturbed earth. Again, nothing. The mountains held their secrets close, as they always had. Some believe the family simply got lost, the wilderness swallowing their story whole. Others think the Hendersons stumbled upon something they were never meant to see, something that made sure they'd never return to tell it. Whatever the truth is, one thing remains certain. The Hendersons didn't just vanish. They were taken by time, by nature, or by something we still can't explain. And if you stand at Crescent Lake on a quiet night, you might feel it too. The weight of their absence in the cold mountain air, The echo of laughter carried faintly across the water, like voices calling from somewhere far away. No one knows what really happened to the Henderson family. But stories like this remind us that the world is still full of places where answers go missing, and some trails never lead home.
You've been watching Echoes of the Unsolved. Until next time, take care and stay safe.